as the president rips into his former personal attorney and fixer. You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy herself. And in the center seat, for the first time, Democrat strategist and former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton in South Carolina, Antoine Seawright. Great to have you on the noon program.
I feel really good. In the South, we don't say lucky, so I feel really blessed. I'm one blessed guy.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. Well, is the seat comfortable?
Very comfortable.
You're good.
You're not going to bless his heart?
Oh, yes. I was waiting for Antoine first.
Not yet.
All right, let's scoot to the news.
Bless your heart. Yeah.
We begin with the big development in the Russia investigation. Michael Cohen pleading guilty in a Manhattan federal court today, this morning, for lying to Congress. The former personal attorney to the president admitted he made false statements to lawmakers about a plan to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Cohen's plea, his second in the past 4 months, comes as part of a new deal with special counsel Robert Mueller in the probe of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. The top Democrat on Senate Intel had this reaction to Cohen's guilty plea.
There seems to be a trend here amongst so many of the president's closest allies that they don't tell the truth. It also is just one more reinforcing indication why the Mueller investigation has to be allowed to continue unimpeded.
And this happened. President Trump ripped into his former attorney and confidant just before leaving the White House for the G20 in Argentina. Watch it.
He's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So he's lying about a project that everybody knew about. I mean, we were very open with it. So he's lying very simply to get a reduced sentence.
There is a lot to scoop up in just the last half hour. Let's go to Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge in Washington. Catherine?
Thanks, Harris. Earlier today, we obtained this draft prepared by Cohen's attorneys for Congress in 2017 about the Moscow project. This is at the heart of today's court action, where Cohen said he lied to congressional investigators about the Moscow proposal. As Cohen left a New York court earlier today, he did not stop to take reporters' questions. In the draft for Congress, Cohen said negotiations over the Moscow project ended in January of 2016, but he told the New York court today it was in fact June of 2016. In the draft, Cohen said discussion of attempted travel to Moscow was limited, that he never discussed it with then candidate Trump, but he told the New York court today the discussions were in fact more extensive. A short time ago on Capitol Hill, the chairman and again the ranking Democrat of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who got this testimony from Cohen in the first place, reacted.
I'm not going to comment upon the commentary that this individual made before our committee. We've kept that confidential, but obviously Mr. Cohen was one of the witnesses that we've always wanted to have come back, and that need goes up.
I haven't seen the specific indictment or the plea, but this is a reason people shouldn't lie when they're in front of a congressional investigation.
In court, Cohen said that he made the statement to Congress to keep up with political messaging and out of loyalty to then candidate Trump. A source close to the Trump legal team questioned how the change in the timing or the breadth of discussions about possible travel to Moscow are material to a crime of collusion with Russia, emphasizing that this deal never came through. That was also a point that the president picked up a short time ago.
Even if he was right, it doesn't matter, because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted during the campaign. I was running my business, a lot of different things during the campaign. So very simply, Michael Cohen is lying, and he's trying to get a reduced sentence for things that have nothing to do with me.
What we don't know is the specifics of the detail that Cohen has now provided to the special counsel about this real estate project, as well as the extent of the discussions he had with then candidate Trump. So there's still a lot of unknowns, but at least we can see what the basis was for the lying to federal investigators or to Congress with Cohen earlier today.
Catherine, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let's bring it out to the couch. Antoine, where do you put all of this in what we know? A lot of people say, oh, it feels like things are kind of wrapping up. What do you think?
Well, I think it's premature for anyone to speculate where this is going, the direction or the speed. But what I do know is that the president once again did what we know he always does, and that's lied about his any association he may have had or have with Russia. So I would couch this as another page in the catalog of lies by the president. It's very unfortunate for, I think, his camp that his personal attorney, his most trusted legal advisor, is now going down in flames. And, you know, I'm from South Carolina, and we like to say there's no interest like self-interest. So I just have to believe that Cohen is going to do everything he can to protect himself through all this, and that means tell the truth.
So you believe Michael Cohen, who has lied about other things, talking about the president and being a witness? Because I just want an answer to that first, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, why would he have to lie at this point? I mean, look,
Okay, so there are different points that you believe somebody who has a history of lying.
No, I never doubted any of what he knew and did not know. What I'm saying is, at this point, he is pretty much on his way, could be on his way to jail. So he has no reason to lie. He has no reason to not do anything but cooperate and tell the truth and tell what he knows.
Where do you get from this that the president lied, though? Let me push back on the first thing that you said, because we're saying that Cohen was mistaken or misreported or lied about the dates when he had these conversations, when they were doing the deal, and about who may or may not travel. That's him lying. How do you get from that
during
the
the course of the campaign, what we heard from Donald Trump was that he had no interest in Russia, he had no business interests, etc. We heard that many times along the campaign trail, and now here we know that they were trying to do some business deals in Moscow. Whether it went through or not, there was an attempt, and that's why you heard.
This was already known, though.
But no, we did not know this. But here's what we do know: we know that Democrats have beat the drum for a very long time about tax returns, and so this is why we have to dig a little further and find these things out, because what we don't know.
Sure. Well, Michael Cohen has every reason to lie, because he's trying to strike a plea deal to save himself, and he's not a credible witness because he just admitted that he has already lied. Further, my understanding is that President Trump, or at least what we know that he's responded in the questions to Mueller, have been true, at least in what he has said previously publicly. Also, I think it's always, that's at least what we know of now, or at least what's been reported. I also think that it is important for people to give pause when we get new information about Russia. We've seen so many things be incorrect. One of the things is actually a narrative being run now about one of the things President Trump responded to regarding questions over the Ukraine platform change to the GOP. Byron York has a great write-up about this, of actually the platform was strengthened regarding Ukraine, and mentioned in there is one that we're going to respond to Russia the same way we did with the Soviet Union. Also talking about armed assistance to Ukraine. And guess what President Trump did as president? He actually reversed President Obama's policy of not providing lethal aid to Ukraine, and he provided that lethal aid to Ukraine. So President Trump's actually been stronger on Russia than President Obama ever was.
Let's think about this from a very logical standpoint.
Is exactly what I just laid out.
Let's take the partisan politics out of it. Do you think
those
someone
are facts, Antoine? Facts are not partisan.
Who could be on his way to jail is going to continue to lie at this point? Like, let's just think about that.
100%. He's trying.
Maybe I'm on Pluto somewhere.
Well, no,
maybe sometimes I am.
We'll come back to planet Earth.
Here's why you would lie, because you have other witnesses and those who have been targets and subjects within this investigation who have said, you know, Mueller's team is putting a certain squeeze on us to say things in a particular way for a particular outcome. And, you know, what they are implying is that they are kind of guided to lie or stretch the truth in a way that's more convenient to Mueller and the outcome that he wants. And that would be, you know, you would assume, to shorten one's prison sentence. That's what Paul Manafort supposedly did when he entered a plea deal with Robert Mueller, and Mueller's team is now saying, well, he went back on his word, he's been lying about stuff, and, you know, Manafort, through his representation, has been saying, no, he was instructed to lie, and he wouldn't do that. So it's all very confusing. It seems that Mueller has some very specific systems in place to get what he wants out of these people who are slippery to begin with. I will certainly give you that. But that doesn't mean that you can all of a sudden connect these dots that magically lead to Russia affecting the outcome of the 2016 campaign. Therefore, the president is going to be...
Let me jump in there just 1 second, Antoine, because I want to respond to something that Kennedy just said, which is interesting. So as of late, we've been hearing the president say that there were other people that the Mueller investigation or investigators could have talked with. Many more people who would have given, you know, a different perspective or more perspective or whatever. But the people who have been chosen are weak in what spot? It's exactly what Kennedy said. They're sloppy. They're shady. Let me finish. They have shadiness in their history, and with Paul Manafort, we have law breaking in his history. So those people are easier to put the squeeze on. They had been investigating Manafort for a very long time. yet you extrapolate what you want from him. You extract it, you extrapolate it, and then you try to use it in another investigation. What does he do? He resists. And what does that do? On a federal level, the president potentially can pardon him. But what Cohen did this morning by saying he's guilty in a state court makes it more complicated because the president can't touch that. So to Kennedy's point again, what is Cohen's bottom line? You said self-interest. That's why he would lie.
Just from, again, practical common sense standpoint.
I think I'm pretty confident.
No, listen to me.
Be careful throwing that around on a couch of women.
Changing the story, how do you know which part is the truth? No, that's what I want to know. If someone is constantly changing their story, when do you decide that strain is the truth and that one is a virulent lie?
How do you know which lane you want to drive down?
All I'm saying to you is, if he's potentially, let's just say hypothetically, he's potentially placing 5 years or 10 years, and if he continues to lie, that could turn into 20. You think he's going to continue to lie through this process?
He's already lied.
But what I'm saying is he won't further lie to drive this next.
If the 10, the 15, the 20 are federal, yes. Because he can attract in that venue a presidential pardon potentially.
There's no logical reason for him to lie. We don't know, but I think there's no logical reason.
I just don't understand why when he was lying before, he was a liar, but now
bingo.
And Harris,
it's as simple as that.
These people who have gone down, they're the closest to Trump.
To reduce his
lie, then he holds the Bible high. Liars don't stop lying.
Common sense.
I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying that's
it seems like Antoine is right. He's just outnumbered.
Antoine, I think.
That is the best line.
I don't think he's right.
Let's move on.
You said you were in Pluto. Come back to planet Earth.
In a new interview, the president not ruling out a pardon for his former 2016 campaign chair, Paul Manafort. So we're going to fold him now in officially into the conversation, stepping up his criticism of the Mueller investigation. We will continue this debate later in the hour. Plus, the president right now is headed to the G20 summit. He just canceled his planned meeting with Vladimir Putin there. And meanwhile, a growing number of senators slamming the White House's response to Saudi Arabia after the death of columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Will Congress force action? And what is the potential effect of all of this? Stay close.
Why are you meeting with the Crown Prince?
It just wasn't set up.
Why are you meeting with the Crown Prince?
It just wasn't set up. It only wasn't set up. I mean, I would have met with him, but we didn't set that one up. I'm meeting with President Xi, which is a very important meeting, having to do with trade. And as you know, I'm making about 3 or 4 meetings. We just didn't have time.
That was President Trump just a short time ago as he heads to the G20 summit in Argentina. The trip comes amid growing pushback over White House support of Saudi Arabia in the aftermath of the murder of columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The CIA has reportedly assessed with high confidence that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia ordered the killing. As you just heard, the president is not planning to meet with the Crown Prince. Meanwhile, a bipartisan group of senators rebuked the White House yesterday after they received a classified briefing on the Khashoggi killing. Many senators were upset that CIA Director Gina Haspel was not there. Here's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who abruptly threw his support behind a resolution seeking to pull U.S. military support for Saudi Arabia.
I changed my mind because I'm pissed. The way the administration's handled the Saudi Arabia event is just not acceptable. The briefing today did not help me at all better understand the role that MBS played in the killing of Mr. Khashoggi. Institutionally, we have a right to be briefed by the CIA. How can I make an informed decision as a United States Senator about whether or not the Crown Prince is complicit in a murder if I don't have access to the intelligence that I read about in the paper? That's not acceptable for me.
Kennedy, I would ask you, so we don't actually know what the U.S. response is, though. You know, talking about how we should be tougher and stronger. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what conversations are going on with the actual king of Saudi Arabia right now, vis-a-vis, you know, the Crown Prince's future.
No, it's funny because we oftentimes project the way we live and our politics and our culture on other countries. And here, if you were in charge and you ordered the murder of a journalist, you would be removed from power. That's not necessarily the case in Saudi Arabia, and that is not going to happen. And we also don't know what the facts are linking MBS to this killing, but when you have the CIA director come out and say, yeah, I'm pretty certain certain that he ordered this whole thing. I don't blame the senators for their frustration because they want access to that intelligence, or at least a briefing from the director herself who can lay out this case. It's incredibly problematic, but this is not the first thing that Saudi Arabia has ever done that should raise the ire of the United States. And when Lindsey Graham and other senators are talking about pulling funding, so we're not involved in a proxy war in Yemen where civilians are dying, and we are by proxy culpable there. I think that should be applauded, and I would much rather see discussions like that where we pull back on any sort of military interference.
Can I just also add, because you brought up the CIA director, Gina Haspel, there was that go back and forth, not only with Lindsey Graham, but with other senators on the Hill yesterday, that, well, why didn't we hear from the CIA director? Was there something that we weren't supposed to hear that might point a finger to the Crown Prince or not? And Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana told me last night that what he was learning on the Hill yesterday, and this is per him only, Gina Haspel and her crew had some concerns about things leaking. So there might have been, this is according to Senator Kennedy. Yeah, well, and in that case, though, even bigger, right? National security reasons, like not just their own, but for all of us. Now, you're giving me that side eye that my 11-year-old gives me sometimes, because what you're wanting is absolute conversation with the CIA director about that. I don't know that we'll gain that, but Senator Kennedy said he wanted to hear from her too. They all did. That may be coming down the pike.
The good news about all of this is that the response from the legislative branch sending a message to the executive branch is a bipartisan effort. And I think that says a lot, particularly with the tone and the temperature in Washington, D.C. What I'm most disappointed in is the White House response to all this. I mean, look, this should go beyond Trump's personal dealings, if he has any, with Saudi Arabia. This should go beyond, the politics of the day. This is about sending a message about these things not happening in the future. And that's what I worry about. There's no excuse for the director.
But I guess my point is, we don't know what the White House response to Saudi Arabia was. We don't know what their conversation is.
We've seen the posture from the president about this so far.
You've seen posture.
But the issues
you
are
don't know
at
what
37,000
has actually
feet.
gone back and forth between them. You don't know about the conversations. You don't know what's been pulled back. We do know this, though, as we're switching gears here just a little bit. He did cancel his meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20, speaking of despots around the world. And this was the tweet. Based on the fact that the ships and sailors have not been returned to Ukraine from Russia, I have decided it would be best for all parties concerned to cancel my previously scheduled meeting in Argentina with President Vladimir Putin. I look forward to a meaningful summit again as soon as this situation is resolved. Good move?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with President Trump in not meeting with Putin regarding this. And also, as I mentioned earlier, President Trump reversed President Obama's policy of not providing lethal aid to Ukraine. President Trump has done that. Again, another point where President Trump has been strong on Russia. Regarding Saudi Arabia, I do think that the Senate's action is a strong rebuke against President Trump in regard to Yemen and the Saudi-led effort there. I think the House will probably follow suit. That being said, I don't think it's going to deter President Trump and his administration in their policy regarding Saudi Arabia. And I think, namely, at least regarding Yemen, it's all about al-Qaeda and the Arabian Peninsula and the concern of threat of terror there, as well as ISIS.
Well, those two things are going to sit
so
side by side.
Well, I think that's why
the legislation will not have the terrorist movement that we are trying to thwart in it. They will be a side by side. And what the senators will be considering, and House members too, will be considering is a situation that streamlines this to all of the other things that they think that they can control, that proxy war on the ground, our input in that, and so on and so forth. But us going after al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula will not be stopped, will not be part of. That's what it's been explained to me by senators.
But my understanding is that the case that Pompeo has laid out is that we should be supporting the Saudis' effort in Yemen due to also AQAP and the terrorist efforts there as well. So that's why he says we should support
To be
Saudis.
continued, for sure. And earlier today, the president calling his former personal attorney a liar after Michael Cohen cops a new plea deal with special counsel Mueller. Judge Andrew Napolitano joins us next to break down what this could mean for the Russia probe and the president. Plus, could President Trump pardon his former campaign chair, Paul Manafort? He says he's not ruling it out. What could the fallout be from such a move? We'll debate that.
It's very sad what's happened to Paul, the way he's being treated. I've never seen anybody treated so poorly. Very simply, Michael Cohen is lying and he's trying to get a reduced sentence for things that have nothing to do with me.
That's more from President Trump outside the White House today, reacting to the news that his former attorney, Michael Cohen, has cut a new plea deal in the Mueller investigation. Cohen pleading guilty this morning to lying to Congress about a Trump Organization real estate project in Moscow. Here is Michael Cohen leaving the federal courthouse in New York City a few hours ago. Let's bring in Fox News senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano. So we saw from the video it happened. What happened, Judge?
Well, apparently Michael Cohen and his lawyers have been negotiating, not with Bob Mueller, but with federal prosecutors here in New York City for, as the president said, a reduced sentence in return for something. We don't know what the something is. So he pleaded guilty to lying to Senate investigators about who he saw in Moscow and what he went there for and what he said to them. The president says this is about a hotel project he was going to build, which he seriously contemplated building and on which he changed his mind, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with the campaign or with his presidency. We don't know what Michael Cohen told the prosecutors in return for them agreeing to a reduced sentence. We may find that out. We may never find it out.
Judge, is the president right when he says that in the lead up to the election, he could do whatever he wanted in terms of business dealings, just like any other business person?
Yes, he's quite correct. So we really don't know what Michael Cohen told prosecutors he was in Moscow for. He was ostensibly in Moscow on a perfectly legitimate business deal, the building of Trump Tower in Moscow, which never happened.
If it's perfectly legitimate, why would he lie about... Oh, you're shaking your head. I see this.
Yeah, I mean, who knows why he would lie? He told a federal judge this morning the reason he lied was to stay on political message, whatever that means. I guess he is saying today that at the time he lied, he thought he would help the president by lying. Obviously, that is not the case.
Judge, I mean, the question of the day so far, since we've heard this, and we've heard Catherine Herridge ask it as well, is how does this materially change what has happened, any case someone would have against the president if Cohen lied about the timing of when they were talking about this building deal that we all knew about, or he lied about the extent to which someone was going to travel, who was going to travel, did we have in-depth discussions about possibly traveling, or did we not really talk about someone possibly traveling to do a meeting on the deal? How would that materially impact something that could be conceived as illegal?
I wish I knew. I wish I had knowledge of what Bob Mueller and the prosecutors here in New York City have, Melissa, but obviously we don't. But typically, when a person is given a very good deal, and the president is right, he got a serious reduction in exposure to jail time, it's for what they have already told the prosecutors. We don't know what he's already told the prosecutors. But I will tell you this, the easiest charge for the government to prove is conspiracy, because conspiracy is an agreement to do something wrong, even if the something wrong never happened. So was Michael Cohen's trip to Moscow part of some agreement or series of agreements to do something wrong for the campaign? I mean, if that's the case, then we would have to hear or see what Michael Cohen told the prosecutors. Whatever it was enough to get them to ask a judge to lower his jail time exposure considerably.
All right, Anton Seawright is on fire to ask a question right now. Anton?
Judge, do you really think that at this point in the investigation that somehow or another the special prosecutor is going in the wrong direction? Because that seems to be the temperature from the right. We need to shut this down. This has nothing to do with anything. Do you really think he's going in the wrong direction at the rate he's going?
Not at this stage of the game, Antoine. I happen to agree with you,
Thank you, sir.
On that. I will also say, and I understand the impatience that a lot of my friends and colleagues have been expected, but having been involved in these cases, not obviously one involving the president. Prosecutors don't always get evidence in an orderly fashion, and they don't always get evidence from credible people. Michael Cohen, the president's right, is not a credible person. He has twice pleaded guilty to crimes of deception, bank fraud, and lying to congressional investigators.
Judge, it's Kennedy. That was my question I have for you. How does special counsel decide what aspects of Michael Cohen's story to believe, or any of these witnesses, when they know that they have lied?
Great question. When they can corroborate what he told them. Just like they're using what Paul Manafort...
They can corroborate the lies?
Corroborate whatever he told them in return for the reduced sentence. Just as Paul Manafort gave them some information, we don't know what, but they'd never put him on the stand because he's an inveterate liar. They will use whatever Manafort told them and whatever Cohen told them that they're able to corroborate through other witnesses or forensic evidence like emails or phone calls or text messages.
But Judge, is any of that information usable if Michael Cohen's a liar and not credible?
If you back it up, it is.
My suggestion is that what the prosecutors are trying to prove is a conspiracy. And a conspiracy is a series of agreements. Now, series of agreements means a number of jigsaw puzzles. I'm going to guess that Michael Cohen gave them a few pieces in one of the jigsaw puzzles, and he gave it to them before this morning, or they wouldn't have entered that agreement.
Okay.
What those pieces were, we don't know, and we may not know, Lisa, until this stuff is laid out by Bob Mueller.
All right. Thank you. President Trump saying he's not taking the possibility of a pardon from his former campaign chair, Paul Manafort, off the table. Manafort's been convicted of multiple counts of financial fraud in connection with his work as a political consultant in Ukraine. The president talked about Manafort this morning as he left the White House for a G20 summit. Watch.
It's very sad what's happened to Paul, the way he's being treated. I've never seen anybody treated so poorly. I said, no, I have not offered any pardons. And I think they asked, or whatever, would you? I said, I'm not taking anything off the table.
The Wall Street Journal reports that Manafort lied to investigators about his personal financial dealings with Ukraine, resulting in special counsel Robert Mueller revoking Manafort's plea deal. In the meantime, conservative author Jerome Corsi, an associate of Trump ally Roger Stone, has ceased cooperating with Mueller and now claims Mueller's investigators pressured him to lie. Corsi has asked his legal team to bring a criminal complaint against Mueller and the Justice Department. Lisa, that's a very interesting wrinkle.
Well, yeah, and I've said this yesterday, but I think that seems rather consistent with the Michael Flynn situation as well, where congressional investigators, according to what the FBI told them, believe that Michael Flynn didn't lie, and then as soon as Robert Mueller took over, he pled guilty to lying. So that raises questions to me and the tactics of Mueller regarding any sort of pardon for Manafort. I absolutely think that would be the wrong decision to make. Clearly, Manafort has violated the law and has done so for quite some time. I question why the FBI never relayed that information to President Trump, considering the fact that they had sat down with him, I believe, in 2013 as well as 2014. You think that would be pertinent information, particularly when they told Dianne Feinstein that she was employing a Chinese spy.
Kennedy?
She certainly does have some colorful practices, which I really appreciate. It's interesting because Corsi is now a public thorn in Mueller's side. He's giving a lot of this information to the press, which, you know, it really isn't leaking because it's so overt and transparent, which is fascinating, and it's got to be really frustrating for Mueller. And, you know, at the same time, we're getting bits of information from Mueller's side because there's some division within that camp of how to proceed with some of the president's answers. And you know, we're seeing in the press some of the answers to the answers in writing the president has given to special counsel. So, you know, the whole thing is now so odd, and there are so many personalities that are connected in the strangest ways that you just sit here every day and you can't, it's like a crazy spy novel. You don't know how it is going to end up or how it's going to test the future limits of special counsels.
The good news about all of this is that we have to be patient and wait. And the Mueller team has done.
That's not good news.
No,
I don't like being patient. How's that good news?
I think it's all good news.
No one's being patient. Everyone is already reading the tea leaves and giving their final conclusion.
The even better news is that there have been almost zero leaks about what's going on in the camp. the thing I'm hopeful about, particularly in this
Where
next...
those answers come from?
The thing I'm hopeful about, particularly in the next Congress, is that we put bipartisan legislation or measures in place to protect the special prosecutor, the work he's done, so that he can finish his work. And at the end of the day, if it all pans out, whether Trump is innocent, Trump is guilty, whatever it pans out, then I think we've done our job and the special prosecutor's done his job. Well, that's what 70% of the American people want.
All right. I know we got to go.
All right. President Trump says if Democrats make good on their threats to launch investigations of his administration, he will punch back by declassifying documents on the Russia probe. Smart political move, disturbing threat? We'll debate.
Welcome back. President Trump reportedly threatening to declassify FISA warrant applications and other documents from the Mueller probe if House Democrats launch investigations against him and his administration when they take control of the House next year. The president telling the New York Post, if they go down the presidential harassment track, if they want to go and harass the president and the administration, I think that would be the best thing that would happen to me. I'm a counterpuncher, and I will hit them so hard they've never been hit like that. This news comes 2 months after a group of Trump allies in the House called on the president to declassify Justice Department documents that they believe would undercut the Russia probe. Those documents include DOJ officials' requests to surveil the Trump campaign advisor Carter Page and memos on DOJ official Bruce Orr's interactions with Christopher Steele, the author of the controversial Trump dossier. Kenny, I'm going to start with you. So we know with recent documents that Congress had obtained with Bruce Orr that Christopher Steele was worried about Comey's firing. He was worried that they were going to be exposed. So is President Trump keeping these documents as leverage against an incoming Democrat-controlled House?
Yes, and that part I disagree with. I don't think they should be used as a form of political extortion. I think that we should get in the habit of releasing these things and getting to peer into the process of FISA application warrant applications. I think that's really critical, and there's so much that we don't know and so much that is left up to the imagination, which leads to all sorts of conspiracy theories and conjecture and demagoguery on both sides. And it also adds to this already toxic environment. We have to come up with a better process. And there are so many outstanding questions because as Adam Schiff talks about conflicts of interest and appearance of, Russian collusion, you could apply those exact same words to the gathering of the dossier and who Christopher Steele might have spoken to at the behest of a political campaign and a national political committee.
Antoine, do you think that this will deter Democrats in their investigations at all?
No, and the president is behaving very immature, and he's conducting himself like a paper tiger in this regard. Look, the Congress has a responsibility, the legislative branch has a responsibility to be a check, to perform checks and balances.
Isn't that what Congress is doing right now?
This Congress did not do that with this president.
Well, no, but the FISA warrants and the FBI
controlled by the Republicans. This Congress did not do that. But here's my message to my Democratic friends in the Congress. Do not spend all of your time slowing down the Congress with investigation after investigations. Be strategic and be mindful in the thought. Instead, focus on legislation. Do the things that got them to the majority, and don't get caught up in this narrative of back and forth to Trump. But also make sure you hold him accountable along the way.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they can, excuse me, Lisa, do that. Eric Swalwell of California told me yesterday that they're going to investigate and legislate, and that he thinks that they can do both. And, walk and talk. I know it is the mantra of the Democrat, walk and talk, but you finally have part of the leadership in Washington back. Is that really where you want to put your powder?
Well, Harris, there's an old song that I love to sing sometimes that says, it takes two to make the thing go right. And so therefore I think they can do both.
This probably won't surprise you. I like to lead when I dance.
I think they can do both. I think they can investigate and legislate.
I don't think so.
But I think it's going to, the investigation part has to be strategic. And I don't think they can just investigate day after day, time after time.
Melissa,
you're going to need a bullhorn to tell your friends that.
But Melissa, to Antoine, but hold on. But Melissa, to Antoine's points, you've got a lot of Democrats now that are gearing up to launch investigation after investigation. These same people have been critical of Republicans in the Oversight Committee doing their job of oversight into things like the FISA warrant against Carter Page and into the FBI's action. So what do you make of that?
I think it's interesting that the left has the same suspicion and frustration about Paul Manafort and Papadopoulos and all of these meetings that the right has frustration and suspicion about the dossier. And it's ironic that both sides don't see that they're both, angry and frustrated and curious and maybe fearful about basically the same thing. When Trump talks about declassifying and others say sources and methods, it's the same people that call for him to just go testify and tell the truth and hang everything out there. I don't know how you solve any of it, but people need to start looking in the mirror.
When you solve it, when you solve it by transparency and President Trump just getting all this information out in the open.
But no one wants to apply the golden rule.
What's the golden rule?
Exactly. Yeah, do unto others as you would have others.
Oh my God, how did I not know that?
That's the Kennedy rule.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I
thought the golden rule was shop with coupon.
No.
The point is, if you don't like the idea that a president could use surveillance power and shady FISA warrants and the investigatory powers of the DOJ and the FBI against a political opponent that you're aligned with, you shouldn't like it when your side does it to the other side.
I don't know who all
it's not okay. That whole aspect of government has gotten so big and so mysterious and so opaque, and we have to shrink it and make it clear, like the bikini I wore on prom night.
I don't know who all these Democrats are that you speak of that are going to do investigations. The Democrats I know are going to run
Schiff, Cummings, Swalwell.
Lisa, they have to do their job. But also I heard Democrats talk about.
All right, we've got to go in.
You Southern girl.
All right. Well.
Oh my goodness gracious.
All right, well, she's confident, but Nancy Pelosi still faces a big hurdle in her quest to become Speaker, whether the wily veteran lawmaker can pull off the deal and reclaim the Speaker's gavel. That's next.
Let me tell you something. I'm talking about scores of members of Congress who just gave me a vote, are giving me a vote of confidence. That is where our focus is. Are there dissenters? Yes, but I expect to have a powerful vote as we go forward.
Welcome back. President Trump reportedly threatening to declassify FISA warrant applications and other documents from the Mueller probe if House Democrats launch investigations against him and his administration when they take control of the House next year. The president telling the New York Post, if they go down the presidential harassment track, if they want to go and harass the president and the administration, I think that would be the best thing that would happen to me. I'm a counterpuncher, and I will hit them so hard they've never been hit like that. This news comes 2 months after a group of Trump allies in the House called on the president to declassify Justice Department documents that they believe would undercut the Russia probe. Those documents include DOJ officials' requests to surveil the Trump campaign advisor Carter Page and memos on DOJ official Bruce Orr's interactions with Christopher Steele, the author of the controversial Trump dossier. Kenny, I'm going to start with you. So we know with recent documents that Congress had obtained with Bruce Orr that Christopher Steele was worried about Comey's firing. He was worried that they were going to be exposed. So is President Trump keeping these documents as leverage against an incoming Democrat-controlled House?
Yes, and that part I disagree with. I don't think they should be used as a form of political extortion. I think that we should get in the habit of releasing these things and getting to peer into the process of FISA application warrant applications. I think that's really critical, and there's so much that we don't know and so much that is left up to the imagination, which leads to all sorts of conspiracy theories and conjecture and demagoguery on both sides, and it also adds to this already toxic environment. We have to come up with a better process, and there are so many outstanding questions because as Adam Schiff talks about conflicts of interest and appearance of, Russian collusion, you could apply those exact same words to the gathering of the dossier and who Christopher Steele might have spoken to at the behest of a political campaign and a national political committee.
Antoine, do you think that this will deter Democrats in their investigations at all?
No, and the president is behaving very immature, and he's conducting himself like a paper tiger in this regard. Look, the Congress has a responsibility, the legislative branch has a responsibility to be a check to perform checks and balances. I think
isn't that what Congress is doing right now?
This Congress did not do that with this president.
No, but the FISA warrants and the FBI
controlled by the Republicans. This Congress did not do that. But here's my message to my Democratic friends in the Congress. Do not spend all of your time slowing down the Congress with investigation after investigations. Be strategic and be mindful in the thought. Instead, focus on legislation. Do the things that got them to the majority, and don't get caught up in this narrative of back and forth to Trump. But also make sure you hold him accountable along the way.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they can, excuse me, Lisa, do that. Eric Swalwell of California told me yesterday that they're going to investigate and legislate, and that he thinks that they can do both. And, you know, walk and talk. I know it is the mantra of the Democrat. Walk and talk. But you finally have part of the leadership in Washington back. Is that really where you want to put your powder?
Well, Harris has an old song that I love to sing sometimes that says, "It takes two to make the thing go right." And so therefore I think they can do both.
This probably won't surprise you. I like to lead when I dance.
I think they can do both. I think they can investigate and legislate.
I don't think so.
But I think it's going to, the investigation part has to be strategic. And I don't think they can just investigate day after day, time after time.
You're going to need a bullhorn to tell your friends that.
But Melissa, to
or
Antoine, but hold on. But Melissa, to Antoine's points, you've got a lot of Democrats now that are gearing up to launch investigation after investigation. These same people